And we're live. Hey people, how you doing? Welcome to the Sports Therapy Association podcast, episode 208. My name is Matt Phillips, creator of RunChatLive.com, and as always, this episode is being recorded live on the Sports Therapy Association YouTube channel and Facebook page. So if you are listening to the podcast and you're thinking, oh, I'd like a little bit of that, I'd like to go and hang out with like-minded soft tissue therapists and maybe ask questions directly to our guests, then all you need to do is go along to one of those places, normally on a Tuesday at 8 o'clock. But for full details, just follow UK_STA on any social media you so choose, and you will be updated. Or best thing, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then you'll get notifications every time we're about to go live. If you do join us live, then thank you very much. It means we really hope a few of you do join live tonight, because it is a great opportunity to add your concerns and reflections as we start this episode entitled Statutory Regulation for Sports Therapists. Joining me will be Gary Benson, founder of the Sports Therapy Association, and Anna Maria Mazzieri, director of the STSchool. And together we'll be discussing the topic of statutory regulation for sports therapists. What are the pros and the cons? Is it something we should be striving for? Is it a pipe dream that could never really be achieved, even if we wanted it? So if any of you out there have questions, more so than ever, I really want you to chime in. In fact, if you are joining live, what I'd love you to do to give us an idea is in the comments, just write what your profession is. Are you a sports therapist? Are you a sports massage therapist? Are you a sports rehabilitation specialist? Or are you, hopefully we've got some allied health professionals out there. I'd love to know that. If you're a physio, chiro, podiatrist, chiropodist, or anything else that you might be, because we'd love to hear your experience of being regulated, because that's a very important part as well. Just joining us in the live lounge now, just to say hi. When you do join us live, then I can bring your comment and question and your logo up. For example, Imi Tester, listening on my drive home from work. Good. Eyes on the road, Imi. I know how addicted to getting involved in this you are, but concentrate first. Safety first. So Glenn Murphy, MBE, that's where the level is with this podcast. We get all the hierarchy coming in here. So Glenn Murphy, MBE, is here as well, saying good evening all. Stevie Barr, and that shows the other end of the spectrum where... Sorry, Steve, I couldn't resist that. I'm just saying diversity inclusion is massive on this podcast, because we've got Stevie saying, "I'll do, good people," in a Scottish accent, which I can't do. I'm sorry, Steve, you can hit me at Therapy Expert for that. Cecily Hislop, good evening, good people. Steve, good people are putting in there. We got sports therapists, we got sports massage therapists. I'm hoping some allied health professionals turn up as well, because I did put what you mean, says Stevie. Sorry, Stevie. Anyway, right. So yes, do use the comments tonight, people. We'd love to hear anything that's on your mind with this very interesting topic. Just to let you know, after this episode, there is going to be a summer hiatus of 2 weeks with no STA podcast. I know, but we're giving you that time to reflect, to pause, because what we really want to do is do a follow-up to this episode with hopefully some representatives from the other professional associations for sports therapists, and we'll all get around kind of a virtual table and hopefully have a chat about what can we do. Is it a reality? Can we work together to help statutory regulation actually become a thing? So I'll send that invitation out to you now, and we'll talk about other associations and bodies and that as the show goes on. But first, let's do it. Without any further ado, I will now bring up my guests, Gary Benson, founder of the Sports Therapy Association, and Anna Maria Mazzieri, director of the STSchool. Hi, Gary. Hi, Anna Maria.
Good evening, all.
Good evening.
Thank you so much, as always, for giving up your valuable time. I'm sure you haven't even had dinner yet, I imagine. So thank you for joining us. For those, people who are regular listeners to the podcast and people who may not listen to the podcast will be aware probably of both of you, the great work you do in our industry. For people who don't know you, which I always hope there are people who are listening who don't know you, Gary, maybe first of all, could you give us an idea of who you are and what you represent? And yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, I founded the STA over a decade ago now, really to plug a gap in the representation for people with foundation degrees, diplomas, advanced diplomas, when the then largest professional body in the industry limited access to their membership to graduates only. And there were people who trained with the likes of the Raworth School Active Health Group, the International Institute of Sports Therapy, who were left without representation. I'd already been working in the industry for quite some time and felt that I could offer the support necessary for those people to thrive in their business.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And Anna Maria Mazzieri.
I'm a clinician. I background in massage therapy, soft tissue therapy, and the graduate sports therapist. But I always say I like to address myself as a soft tissue therapist because it's way more representative of what we do, what I do. But I also run the STSchool, which has been established since 2008, and I've been teaching for even before that since 2006. And for my sins, I've been around long enough, and I've been involved at different levels within professional associations. And me and Gary know each other from the industry quite a bit. And this issue of regulation has been coming in and out for many years. And so it's great to be invited to discuss this one.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And for listeners who aren't aware of my background, just in case, I'm Matt Phillips. I've started off in Swedish massage back in the early 2000s. I'm coming from a strength and conditioning background, and my family, my brother, in fact, basically I would kind of bend them in the gym upstairs and he'd mend them downstairs in the clinic. So it was a wonderful relationship we had. But then I was interested in working with the hands-on as well as the exercise prescription. So I got into that in the early 2000s, like I say. And that's how eventually, as I moved up and did CPD and stuff, I ended up, Gary was actually one of my tutors, as you mentioned, in the active health group when I did my level 5 there later on. So I was interested to see what's level 5 all about. And then hence, after meeting the Gary Benson, I had no choice but to join him when he invited me to be a member of the STA, because we have very common themes in mind when it came to being a professional association, one of the few out there who we will mention, who just want to provide support for clinicians. And indeed, this podcast came out of that, particularly in the COVID pandemic, because more and more clinicians needed support, and suddenly they were reaching out rather than keeping it all in, which was great and probably helped a lot of clinicians maintain their business. So, and here we are today, 208 episodes, 2 weeks later on, episodes later. So that's where I'm coming from. So great. Here we go then. It's a massive topic. We're going to try and do it now, but like I say, there will be a follow-up. I've got a kind of a structure down here, which I'm going to take it through. But like I say, if there's any questions out there, people who are listening live, then do jump in, because this really is a case where your questions, you're on the shop floor, you're working therapists, and we want to know how you sit in your personal situation. So, but I think maybe to start off, and maybe I'll turn to you, Gary, first of all. I think a good place to start is maybe talk about one of the best known statutory regulators out there for health and care professions, especially when we talk about physios, for example, and that's the HCPC. So maybe, I don't know whether you can do it in brief, but what is the HCPC, Gary, and what do they do?
Well, the HCPC is formerly the Health Professionals Council, the HPC, oversees the 14 regulated professions in England, 12 in Scotland and 13 in Wales. They answer to the Professional Standards Authority, who are the overarching regulator. They have a mixture of HCPC type, General Osteopathic Council, and more recently the accredited registers. So that's the hierarchy. It's the Professional Standards Authority, Healthcare Professionals Council.
Fantastic. And we should mention that there's loads of titles in there, very varied. I mean, I had to look some of them up, but that's just my lack of information. But yeah, we've got loads of people. Physios are most well known for being part of them, but they also regulate podiatrists, chiropodists. We've also got in there arts. Would you know what an art therapist is? Have you heard that before?
I mean, I think if we look at regulation, Matt, regulation has always been touted as a way to protect the public. So my perception of of wanting to protect the public means that the therapy being provided, the intervention being provided, is dangerous. Now, I don't want, in inverted commas, my industry, the remedial, the sports therapy industry, to be labelled as dangerous. And that's one of the reasons that I don't think that statutory regulation is appropriate. I can go on to the other reasons later on. But just to put it into perspective of
I agree fully.
How much money changes hands here. Okay, if you look at the HCPC and just take one of their professions, which is the Chartered Society of Physiotherapists, if you just look at the CSP fees, 65,000 physios, each paying £442 per year. Extrapolate the figures, £28.75 million. And that's from one profession, and that doesn't take account of some people don't pay the full amount because they might be student members or affiliate members, but that's the type of money we're talking about. In 2010, the estimate to regulate a further profession was between £3 and £5 million in what was called machinery of government. That's the time taken in the Houses of Commons and Lords to actually go through the process to legislate for it to be statutory regulated. And that's undoubtedly gone up. And if anybody listened to the Treasurer's, the Chancellor's speech yesterday, they're trying to save £22 billion. I don't see us anytime soon having the machinery of government required to regulate further professions. And that's reinforced by 3 government white papers since 2010, enabling excellence and reforming regulation.
And
okay, so one of the obstacles is the money, which in fact was one of the things which we'll mention later on. Somebody did bring that up, is some people don't realise the cost of it. But I don't want to get too negative straight away. I was going to kind of hope that you guys were going to save your personal opinions till a bit later on, but you've made it quite clear now that you are totally against the idea. But I'm interested still in the idea of the HCPC, because this is what a lot of people are attracted to the idea of it, is that by having a regulator, then they do have kind of key functions of maintaining standards of proficiency and conduct. And this is really important, I think, and affects our industry, approving education and training programs, which health and care professionals must complete before they can register. And then also the other one, which I think attracts people to this, is maintaining and publishing a register of health and care providers. So you've got predetermined professional requirements and standards of practice. So I know Anna's jumping to get in here.
Yes, I'm dying
on paper, that, for me, and I'm going to play devil's advocate here, for me, that sounds like exactly what our industry needs and the public need.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Sorry, I need to find. Absolutely. That, we don't have, there's most of it, I agree with you. But here we're talking about statutory regulation. That is, you're talking about standardization, and we're talking about statutory regulation. You do not need to be statutory regulated to have standardization of training, of quality, and on abilities of providing and some of the NHS services. And I'll give you some examples after. So what is our needs in the industry? I'm sure that here we all agree that we want standardization of quality. Go and talk to osteopaths, chiropractors, and physiotherapists that they are statutorily regulated, and ask them if their training is standardized, as we think they might be. So being statutorily regulated is to protect the public for those interventions that they have a risk ratio where they have to be, the public needs to be protected. The only thing I would say that I agree with Gary that we do not think we have as a higher risk ratios than maybe other professions. I would argue though that that's the only part that I would argue for a statutory regulation, that what is harm? It's not just physical harm. So we can be, by the lack of standardization, we can certainly harm clients with 𝐒𝐵IC language and all the narrative and lack of training and so on. But in general, I think we are discussing two different things. they need a standardization, and they need to have a centralized register that helps us keep the accountability in our industry and statutory regulation. The two, they don't have to be. And I would say, been following HCPC, and for those ones, HCPC has been criticized quite extensively for not being fit for purpose. So, it's not all roses what is out there. The last, and I promised, and I let Gary go, it's quality. Sorry, being statutorily regulated does not necessarily mean quality. There are other ways that we can demonstrate and we can raise our profile in the public domain of quality that does not have to be estate registered.
Okay, great points. Let me just break that down a little bit. So yeah, I think that's a really important point that listeners need to take on board, that statutory regulation is not the only way to get standardization of quality and training. There's other ways that might not incur the fees which Gary picked up on, because it's important to remember that. And people are already kind of saying, Stephen Barr has already said in the comments, hey, where the hell does that money go? What's it used for? And that is a really important question, and one that often is not answered a lot. It's a lot of money. Where does it go? And what cars are they driving? So it's an important question. But the other interesting thing I wanted to pick up on was the health thing. For me personally, and again, I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit, I worry that there is a danger in what you said, Anna Maria, of manual therapists, soft tissue therapists with the best intentions in the world, getting their cups out, giving that an hour of acupuncture, whatever it is, some modal. I'm not dissing any particular modal application, but doing this to a repeated client for like 8 sessions with all the best intention in the world. They might not even be charging that much, they're probably not, but missing red flags, not looking at that case history, because they've been trained in such a way that that's the only tool they've got. It's the old thing: if you've only got a nail, what are you going to do? You're just going to hammer it. So
you can protect the public
there is
without
a danger.
statutory.
You're adding to undiagnosis or misdiagnosis by not asking the right questions and not knowing when to send people on. So that would be my only comment of where I think statutory regulation, or definitely some standardization, is needed, because people with the best intention in the world are delaying proper necessary treatment.
I am pretty sure everybody here, Gary, I'm not sure about you, but I'm pretty sure that we all here agree that we need standardization of quality. At least the base, so standardization of quality is not under scrutiny. Okay.
All right. I'm interested then. Don't forget, people, if you've got questions in there, then do kind of, leave them in the comments so we can get to them.
Matt, if we're talking about standardization, and I'm just going to make up locations. Okay. A sports therapy degree, we're talking about sports therapists. There's no minimum standard of education. We've got members who've come from the ex-military, who might be an exercise remedial instructor. They might be coming from a sports coaching background, a strength and conditioning background, and transitioning and adding skills and therefore meeting the National Occupational Competency Standards as a sports therapist. But if you went to Wales, as an example, and enrolled on a degree, that degree might be called a sports exercise and massage therapy degree, and it might be heavily weighted towards manual therapy. If you go to the Northeast, you might do an honours degree, and it might be heavily weighted towards strength and conditioning. If you go to Scotland, as another example, and do a degree, it might be heavily weighted towards sports trauma. And if you go down to the southeast, it might be heavily weighted towards pitch side first aid. So there's no standardization, and a degree is a degree. And what happened in 2013, and one of the reasons that the STA was born, was because there was a discriminatory policy against people who'd done a foundation degree at level 5, achieved a certain benchmark, and then did a top up. But those people who took that route came out with a sports therapy honours degree. Now, how can we differentiate between a sports therapy honours degree and a sports therapy honours degree? And that's my point, is that there isn't standardisation. It'd be very difficult to standardise it. And the number of universities seeking accreditation has dropped immeasurably. Plus, the amount of universities delivering these programs has dropped exponentially over the past 2 years. You know, my local college and university, they are not running their foundation degree in sports therapy. That one of them still maintaining a master's. So there's lots of things going on. But, you know, if you could put up that, you know, the reason that we're having this chat, Matt, we've got that screenshot, haven't we, of the post that was put out recently, which stimulated lots of our members to get in touch. And then I felt incumbent to issue a response to that. And
okay, hold on, whoa, you're jumping the gun. I'm going to bring that up, don't worry. There's one other question just to pick up some things. I love the idea, and I want to talk more eventually about this idea of standardization without statutory regulation. What about the protection of protected titles? Because that's the other thing that comes with statutory regulation, is you're not allowed to call yourself a physio unless you have got everything which, you know, is being processed and handed over. And so we know there's a standard there as well. Can you have a protected title without statutory regulation, or is that something which only be achieved if you have got statutory regulation? Because it would be very useful if all universities offering sports therapy had the same syllabus and the same kind of regulated thing, where you're all getting the same product, because it would help patients to know what they're getting, employers. There wouldn't be this, I rented, or I'm paying one person to do the job and they're terrible, yet this other person could be great. So how does that?
Until everybody, every stakeholder sits around the same table, Matt, and comes up with some cohesive forward plan, that can't occur, because at the moment there's no minimum standard of education. My granny could call herself a sports therapist with no training whatsoever, and nobody can stop her. Okay, the protected title, it's, you know, I don't know what people want from that protection of title. You know, if people ask me what my title is, I always say I'm a facilitator. I'm here to facilitate outcomes that you desire. I never use I'm a teacher. I'm a a graduate sports therapist. I'm a diploma sports therapist. I never say that. I'm just here to facilitate your goals and your outcomes. So it's really difficult to achieve that. And even with a protected title like physiotherapy and physiotherapist, there's lots of people on social media calling themselves physio. And as much as HCPC, you know, get in touch with them and say for every proven case it's up to £1,000 fine, physio is not a protected title, neither is sports physio.
So it's not the
physiotherapy has become a verb for what we do to people rather than a title.
Implies something.
On a weekly basis, I'm contacted by members who are saying, yeah, but you know, I'm in the phone as Gary the physio, because that's what people put us down as. You know, I've got Dave the plasterer and Shane the electrician in my phone. Somebody might have Gary the physio, and it doesn't matter how many times I tell them I'm not a physio. Oh yeah, but that's what I think of you as. So it's all about public awareness. You know, there's lots going on in the background, and you know, I've had to support quite a few of our members with in discussions with HCPC around that. And if you remember, a couple of years ago, there was the whole thing about hashtags. If you use a hashtag physiotherapy in your social media post, are you inferring you're a physio, or are you trying to engage with that community?
Yeah. I'm just thinking, would you be worried if you had to calling yourself Gary the dentist or Jane the GP?
Who knows what is got us under?
If they wouldn't do it, would they? Because they wouldn't have the balls to do it. Because
there are cases. You know, if you go back 5-10 years, when tooth whitening was all the rage, and you had clinics setting up for tooth whitening, that had to be regulated because it was a part of dentistry. At the moment, we've got really invasive treatments that are not regulated. We've got the CSP have come out and said, because of the exponential rise in pneumothoraces from thoracic needling, well, acupuncture is not regulated. Aesthetics, you can go to your local high street and have somebody pump fillers into your lips and your eyelids. with no regulation and no checking at all.
And this is where, for me, the term protected title, and there is this discussion quite often in another forum of physiotherapists, and you hear them getting quite upset by the local sports therapist or sports massage therapist calling themselves a physio. Most of the time they do so without the awareness of the protected title. And my comment is always, why is he bothering you? So what the protected title was something that was for physiotherapists, was something that was born when there was the need. That need is changed, the workforce has changed. Should we protect the title or should we protect the occupational competencies? So because now that we're going towards a more interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, the cross-pollination between osteopaths, physiotherapists, chiropractors, is the name that we should protect? Or should we protect the ability to work with occupational competencies, i.e. the abilities in our case, the ability to work with people with pain and injury? That should be protected. So people that they do not have at least a certain minimum of those learning outcomes and therefore those qualifications, then they cannot work with people. Not, a title about, I could not care less if somebody calls themselves a sports therapist and so I always say to our students, for respect to the sports therapists that they have it in their diploma, but a lot of occupational competencies are very similar across the board, even with physios. So should we rethink the whole title, protection of title within MSK care?
Well, it has been rethought. If you look at the government white paper Enabling Excellence from 2010, that was a consultation over 18 months to 2 years discussing a more modern approach to regulation. There was then reforming regulation, I think, in 2017, 2019. And what came out of those is that the government white paper stated things like the professional associations involved in the industries need to take more responsibility, embrace codes of conduct and ethics, have a disciplinary procedure, which, in an unregulated industry, if one of my members did anything untoward, my only power is to revoke their membership. I can't stop them practicing. So that's the limitation. But, look at the HCPC disciplinary procedure. We all know one person who's been going through it for over 4 years. 5 years. Yeah. It's not fit for purpose. And that's why the government are moving away from statutory regulation, unless it can be clearly demonstrated that profession presents a grave danger to the public. And the other thing is...
sorry, Anna, I'm sending you messages in private.
I'm so sorry.
Can you resist the temptation to sit forwards because your volume goes up about to a 10 out of 10? Sit back.
Am I okay?
That's lovely back there. I'm just you've got to take away that Italian lurching forwards to express yourself a little bit. Sorry, it's just I'm thinking of the podcast. Continue. I'm sorry to interrupt, madam.
Now we're completely gone with my menopausal brain.
Done it again. Straight away I said it, and that's it.
So that's it. Oh God, that is complete. No, what I meant that out of that, I think it was the 2010 or 2011. The professional associations, the government asked for a voluntary regulation. In fact, that was from the 2000 initial consultation from the King's Fund, that we needed to be looking for voluntary regulation. That's why the CNHC, to be laughed at, sorry, I'm not allowed to say that, but I'll say it. The organization to be laughed at, that was born to be the voluntary register to help maintain the standards of the complementary health industry. Look what they've done. They got the funding from the government. They were not fit for purpose from the first place because the people, let's say, they did not understand the industry. And then once they lost the funding, they had to get any team Tim, Dick and Harry or Tom, Dick and Harry.
When-
or,
It's great, yeah.
yes,
when
that's, you know,
CNHC
in, and then you are in the same broad with Crystal Healers. No offense to Crystal Healers, but what I mean is
what happened, Anna Maria, when CNHC and the voluntary regulatory route was recommended. I was a profession-specific board advisor for 3 years to the CNHC for sports therapy. And when they launched their sports therapy register, certain criteria weren't met. 154 people were incepted onto the register. I flagged that up, and they said, well, what we'll do, we'll put them through a program of training to meet the occupational competencies which were missing. That never happened. I chose to resign my tenure there. Now, I just had a look yesterday, and on the CNHC register, which has been around for around about 14 years, give or take, there are 90 sports therapists, and there are 54 sports massage therapists. That's on one voluntary register. Another voluntary register is held by the FHT, and this may be just the way that their website performs the functionality, but there are 50 sports therapists and there are 50 sports massage therapists. But when you look through the skills that they have, they may not have, say, sports therapy or sports massage. So the industry as a whole has decided that voluntary regulation is not their desired route. Mm-hmm. Because it's not working, because more people would have joined, and of those people who did join, lots of people don't renew.
Right. No. Excuse me. So we've started throwing some different letters in there, which is one of my, just makes my brain kind of fry when I hear all these. So this is something I wanted to go on to just to clear up what we have got, because we've got very similar letters, and acronyms. So rather at the moment, the state of sports therapy is we're not regulated. So instead, there's a number of professional associations, and correct me if I'm wrong here, because I may well be, but they're voluntary professional associations. You can be a sports therapist and not belong to any of these, and there's no legal need for you to do so. But there are professional associations who offer their services to provide advice and support, and as far as sports therapy goes, I think we've got the Sports Therapy Association, which is us, the STA. You've also got the Society of Sports Therapists, who we're going to mention, as you mentioned earlier on, Gary probably stimulated this discussion by a recent post they did in, relating to the new government. And also we've got the Sports Therapy Organisation, which is where I met you originally, Gary, many moons ago. As far as sports therapy goes, is that the three? Is there anyone I left out, or?
Well, I mean, they are the three who in theory develop resources which are industry specific. Mm-hmm. You could argue that the CNHC is not a membership body, that's a registration body. They don't offer any membership benefits whatsoever. But you could, as I've already mentioned, join the FHT or the CTHA as a soft tissue therapist, a sports massage therapist, or a sports therapist. But they tend to be more general on the complementary therapists, none of which I'm willing to diss in the same way as Anna Maria did.
No, because you might want to get into the table. But that's interesting. So, because this is the other thing I wanted to lead on from here. As far as sports massage goes, and like you've said, we've got people there like the ISRM, SMA, FHT. I'm not going to start saying what they stand for because it's about sports therapy tonight. The CTHA. But in theory, because there's no regulation, they could advertise themselves as sports therapists and there would be no problem at all. But also my follow-up question is, we're talking about regulation for statutory regulation or even standardization for sports therapists. Should people who are sports massage therapists and belong to these other associations and organizations, is what we're talking about tonight relevant for them as well? Could they benefit from some kind of standardization? Would it come under the same umbrella as sports therapists, or would that need to be kind of separate?
Well, Matt, if we look at the whole regulatory process, there was a precedent set called grandparenting. Now, let's just hypothesize that today the government have announced that sports therapy is going to be regulated on its anniversary next year. Okay, so the 30th of July 2025, sports therapists will become regulated. Now, between now and then, anybody who's a member of one of the stakeholders, we, as the STA, we would fight your case for you to be incepted onto the register. If you're not a member of any of the bodies specific to our industry, you still have the right to apply to go onto the register. And it's not beyond the realms of possibility that soft tissue therapists who have met the occupational competencies for sports massage, of which there are 2 general ones, there are some subsections within those, if they've met the additional 12 competencies for sports therapy, then in theory they could apply as well to be allowed onto the register. The question is, who judges that? Who is going to be responsible for making the decisions? Because the physios have the Chartered Society, but this time next year, we would have to have a representative council made up of people from the STO, people from the STA, and people from the SST. One of us wouldn't say, well, we're taking this on board, because that's not democratic. We would all have to be involved in that.
Which is why we're kind of inviting members, what I said at the beginning, representatives from the other 2 main organisations. Am I missing someone out here? I just don't want to upset. I've already upset Stephen Barr once. Can I just say, Stephen Barr mentioned SMTO. What's SMTO?
The Scottish Massage
Scottish, of course.
Oh no, it's not Scottish Massage anymore. It's Scottish Manual Therapy Organisation.
I'm sorry, Stevie. Yeah, we should mention that. My apologies for missing them out as well. And we could have a representative from the regions like that as well. That'd be great as well. Yeah, and BASRAD as well, which for people unaware, British Association of Sports Rehabilitators. I just want to say one thing, and I'm not having a go, but I think I don't think it's done on purpose, but people get confused. And I know there's been emails from STMMs and things, but like you go to, it's just an example. I went to BASRAT just to check, what it's being advertised as. And there it says the British Association of Sport Rehabilitators, the UK regulator and Professional Association for Sports Rehabilitators. Now, to me, that sounds like, oh, wow, sports rehabilitators have already got a UK regulator. Why can't we have that? But that's not the case, is it? That would be my interpretation. That's what it looks like. It implies like, even if it's not their intention.
Matt, that doesn't just apply to BASRAT. And with respect to BASRAT, they've done some really good work on their international recognition
thumbs up to Ollie Coleman. Yes, definitely.
For going through the voluntary accredited route through the Professional Standards Authority, and they maintain their register. That's their business model. I personally don't believe that accredited registers are solving anything. They're just perhaps adding another layer of bureaucracy to the process. But we've got it in our industry, and I'm going to read, if I may, from one of the stakeholders' websites.
Just to highlight the confusion that is out there for
I was going to say about the PSA. Let's mention about the PSA. So the PSA, the Professional Standard Authorization, are the regulator of all those councils. So PSA regulates HCPC, regulates BASRAT. So HCPC is actually accountable to PSA.
And that's what I mentioned earlier. The PSA are the overarching regulator. If I wanted to start an accredited register today, it would cost me in excess of £25,000 of hoop jumping and fee paying to get an accredited register. Additionally, there's an annual fee of 20-something thousand pounds plus £1 or £2 per member. So you could hypothesize that BASRAT are paying £30,000 a year for the privilege of holding the accredited register.
And Gary, the other thing is for those people that they do not know us, the audience that do not know us, you listen to us in podcast, but we work extensively. So those are all options that have been explored. Let's have a look what it is. So you do your calculation, you think, what can that bring? So if I have to pay minimum of £25,000 for my members, what that will bring to my members in terms of benefit, that I will have to raise their annual fee so much more. And you think of, so those things have been already explored, especially from people like us that we've been around for a little bit long enough to have had the opportunity to explore.
If I could go on, Matt, going on from what
definitely give us. So we're going to have some examples of the confusion that's easily seen from different stakeholders.
So from one of the major stakeholders in this industry, the Sports Therapy Organisation, this is taken from a screenshot of their website today. And if anybody wants to verify these facts or to challenge this information, I urge you to write to them. If you are a member of the STO and you are led to believe what this statement is correct that I'm going to read out, challenge them, make them accountable for their actions. When I read out from the SST website, challenge them. Don't come to me. All I'm doing is presenting publicly available information. So I'll read, and I quote, "We, the STO, are an organisational member of the GCMT, the General Council for Soft Tissue Therapies, and are a sports therapy regulator and a PSA accredited register. We are also an organisational member of the Federation, the International Federation of Sports Medicine." That is factually incorrect. They are not a sports therapy regulator. They are not a professional standards authority accredited register. That's one example. The second example.
The GMCT did that last year, and I got quite attacked because I replied to the comment. I don't remember what it was, but they said something about we got together and created these new policies which therapists must follow. No, you're not the regulator.
This is a direct quote from the Society of Sports Therapy, Society of Sports Therapists website today. A sports therapist who is a member of the Society of Sports Therapists is an allied health professional who has the knowledge, skills, and ability to, and then they list 5 competencies. So I went on to the allied health professionals websites for England, which is 14 professions, and sports therapy is not listed. For Scotland, there are 12. It's not listed. And for Wales, there are 13. It's not listed. So if you are a member of the SST and you believe you are an allied health professional, please write to them. Make them accountable for that statement.
So there we go. This is why we need to have a conversation around the table, because, I mean, just to make sure, it could be outdated information. It could be a website that hasn't been updated. I mean, we're just saying what this we checked today, were they, Gary, on the website. So this is currently what's being displayed, and you can't go away from it. It is confusing for therapists.
It's dangerous.
So this is the sort of thing we want to talk about. So when people are interested in going down the route of statutory regulation, we've all got to get together in case of the 3.
People are making choices of the university degrees out of those texts. Because they think they're going to be statutorily regulated, because they think they're not going to be just, into bracket, massage therapists, because they all look down at us massage therapists. They're making those decisions to go university because they think they can go have NHS jobs. Yeah,
it's
so
tricky.
this is the importance of being very, very clear at those stages.
Matt, can I just say something? I want to address some of the concerns that have been sent to me this week and some of the messaging that's in here. Why can't we have one body that covers sports therapy, one body that covers sports massage? And I think that's an issue for commercialism. Okay. Now, I admit that I add to the problem. By creating the STA, I added to the problem. And I did it for the right reasons. I was involved. I was invited to be the chair of one of the other organizations we've mentioned. And I resigned probably about 9 or 10 months later for a mixture of personal and professional reasons. And I decided to set up the STA. And I did that because I'd made promises to people in the industry, in my job as an assessment strategist, and a lecturer and an instructor, that I could represent them. I'd been a member of the GCMT Council. I'd been a member of the Sport Remedial Therapies Council when it put together the curricula for sports and remedial therapies in the late noughties. and I'd represented. I'd been a sports therapy advisor to other associations and other people. So I thought, I've got the skills, I've got the contacts, I've got the knowledge, I've got the experience, and I don't want to feel anybody feeling isolated. So I add to that political climate by doing this. But I say, and on Judgment Day, I'll stand at the pearly gates and I will be able to say with confidence that I have told the truth about this industry. I have not done this for commercial gain, because we're a not-for-profit association. If anybody wants to check out the companies that we're mentioning now, all you've got to do is go onto Companies House website, do a search for the company, do a search for the people of significant control, and you will see who is running these and who in theory is taking the money. Somebody mentioned, where does all the money go? Where does all the money go?
Great points. Yeah. Look, right. So look, where are we? 2047. Yeah. So we're just, again, we're not, our objective here is not to, is it villainify? Can't remember what the word is. We're not picking on anything particular. We're just showing that a lot of people say, yeah, we know it would be great to have fantastic standards of practice and education and training. But in the case of sports therapy, because of the history of it and the way there are different associations with different ways of running things, it's not that easy, which is why we all want to get around a table and kind of talk about it, which brings us on to what you mentioned early on, Gary, and why we decided to have this podcast. It was a post that was shared and we got a lot of email. You got a lot of calls, didn't you, Gary? I'll bring it up on the screen and I'll talk you through it, people who are listening to the podcast. Because this is why basically we made this episode. Let me just bring this up a moment. So this was a post which was shared across social media, and it was from the Society of Sports Therapists, who are one of the three main professional associations for sports therapists. Just remember, hopefully we've made it clear that there is no one official association or regulator that represents all sports therapists out there. Okay, it's just not, it just doesn't happen. So it's interesting to remember that as we read this, because it's important. So
Matt, if I may, Anna Maria touched on the point earlier. It's a really valid point. People are making decisions based on information that they are given at university, at college, etc., and what they see on social media.
It's very true. It's the power of social media to be good and bad.
They can't make an informed choice until they've got all of the information. And all of this information is publicly available. You can go to the HCPC website. You can look at all of the minutes. And just on this, on this post that was put up, despite our continued efforts since 1998, right? The Society of Sports Therapists was incorporated according to the Companies House in 2002. Okay, so there's a disparity there. The first HCPC meeting where there was discussion of an application happened on the 1st of March 2006. And in my response to this, I did list and go through, provide links to all of this information. But if I may, I'll read.
Let me just read, for people listening to the podcast who can't see the screen image, I'll just read out what was on the post, because then it will make sense. So it's important update on statutory regulation for sports therapists. An update from one of the professional associations. So despite our continuous efforts, and we're quoting here, since 1998, which Gary referred to, the journey to regulate sports therapists has faced many political hurdles. The HCPC's recommendation for regulation was made during the previous Labour government, but changes in government stalled progress. This recommendation still stands strong and has received unanimous commendation from a Health Select Committee. With a new government, this might finally push through this vital regulation. Want to help? Let us know if you'd like a draft email to send to your local MP. There we go. We've got some context now. So, Gary, you've already kind of mentioned the dates don't really stand up, but continue.
And then the second thing that concerns me, it says the HCPC's recommendation for regulation was made during the previous Labour government. The HPC, the Health Professionals Council, was the body at the time, and I appreciate it's the same thing. It's changed its name, but for clarity and for detail, it has to be correct. Mm-hmm. At the meeting, this is the feedback, and I've just chosen 3 of the minutes. Mm-hmm. Minute 8.4 from the meeting on the 1st of March 2006. The council noted that further clarification regarding the distinct scope of practice of this profession was necessary, as there appeared to be substantive overlap between the work undertaken by sports therapists and the work undertaken by professions regulated by the HCPC. It went on to say at 8.5, the council noted that clarification was required as to whether the possibility of a joint application with other professional bodies, such as the British Sports Rehabilitators and Trainer, BASRAT, has been considered. 8.6 said, the council noted it was unclear how many practitioners were using the title of sports therapist. The council noted that consideration needed to be given to the question of how the HCPC would communicate with the individuals who were not on the voluntary register regarding grandparenting for the use of protected titles. So that was the first meeting. That's quite clear. There was, HCPC said there should be a consultation with BASRAT. To my knowledge, that never took place. I did have sight of an email around that time. I can't find it, so I'm not going to tell you what it said, but there was a decision made not to consult with BASRAT. They now won't be interested because they've got the accredited route. The follow-up to this meeting, where the answers were expected, and this was a meeting on the 11th of May 2006, the council noted that the society was experiencing difficulty in ascertaining a figure of how many practitioners were calling themselves sports therapists. The Society of Sports Therapists was a voluntary body, and practitioners are not obliged to have membership of the society or the STO or the STA or any of the other bodies in the stakeholders involved in order to use the title sports therapists. The council noted that the entry qualification for the part of the profession covered by the Society of Sports Therapists was at degree level. That's not correct, because at the time you could join the society on the back of a 20-day diploma from Active Health Group or a 10-day diploma from sportstherapyeducation.com, which was a company which was run by the persons in significant control until 2020 were the chairman of the society and his, I assume it's his partner, his wife, because they have the same address in Glasgow. Those who had completed a degree represented only a small but growing percentage of those who call themselves sports therapists. It is likely that only a small percentage of those using the title would be eligible for grandparenting onto the proposed register.
Okay, so what's the solution, Gary? I mean, it's the first thing is we need to all get together and talk this out, because we're saying what these people have done in the past, and it would be really nice to have a representative from the STO and a representative from the SST to sit down and go and clarify some of the things. There might be totally innocent explanation or whatever, but until we sit down and talk about these things in a public environment and let other people hear it, then it's a little bit difficult to move forwards and talk about standardization and all that.
It's very hard not to be political, okay? But if you look at the support for statutory regulation, and you look at the major stakeholders, the STA don't run any training, and I can quite honestly say that if tomorrow the government announced that we were going to be regulated, I would fight tooth and nail to have a position on the council or the board of the authority deemed necessary to take that forward, okay? But I would be quite happy that I'd done my job for our sports therapy members, that I could then hand over those people to the council, if you like. I would be upset because we've got a reputation for extremely efficient communication, for comprehensive support. And we don't just represent graduate sports therapists. We've got graduate sports rehabilitators, we've got soft tissue therapists, we've got sports massage therapists, and I would still want to fight the corner for them. So we've all got to get around the table. But if you look, what were called aspirant professions, they were people who wanted to be regulated. In 2012, when I was promised that we would be regulated in time for the Olympics, in 2012, the HCPC removed sports therapists from the aspirant professions list. So we're no longer on there. The government have issued 2 white papers saying they only see statutory regulation being used in emergency situations in the future. So we're talking about a moot point. It's not going to happen. Yes. We've got to get over that. Yes, we could all sit around a table. Yes, we could all join forces and be a really strong force for the voice of sports therapists. But that won't happen when people who have got 1,700 members paying £100 each have got an income of £170,000 a year. They might have 2,000 students paying the equivalent of £75,000 a year. Go on Companies House. Look how much money is involved in this industry. I'm independently audited. My accounts are online. Go and search them. Challenge me on them. Make me accountable, but make the others accountable too.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, you're absolutely. There is also for me another point that often you have, in fact, even in this context here, I've seen some of the comments saying, can we have one body for sports therapists, one for sports rehabilitators? Actually, I like to have different professional associations because we're all a tiny little bit different. Or every professional, I'm a member of several of them because I get out of each of them, they have a little bit their own little niche. So having different professional association, I think, is very healthy. And again, it reflects, I keep saying that, but it reflects the depth of the variety that we have in our beautiful industry. The fact that we need standardization of quality, at least a minimal level, that is something different.
Would we would we need to sit around a round table to achieve that standardization of training?
I agree.
Would we need that? Yeah. With these people we're talking about, we still have to have the conversation, but it's not for statutory regulation. It's for how do you get standardization of training.
Can I say, Matt, I've been researching a little bit for my next projects, and I do like what the foot health practitioners have done. So a foot health, for those of you that are not aware, foot health practitioner is somebody that is is support. In fact, they're called support workers for chiropodists. They have level 3 and level 4 qualifications, and the Royal College of Podiatry they started in 2021. So it training, like individual training and private training, like it would be for us. All of it is vocational, so there is no BSc on it. But what they do, they can now apply for registration as foot health practitioners, support workers of the podiatrists under this Royal College of Podiatry. And actually it works very well because it maintains the standards. So the Royal College of Podiatry looks after the standards. The application is competencies being mapped over, the quality, so they maintain the standards, they protect the public, but it's overseen by one, but plus you have all the other association that looks after the foot health practitioner. So it's a very similar profession than ours because they're a little bit autonomous, but not enough to be able to work with, like, for example, a diabetes foot at a certain level. So that's why they have to then to refer to chiropody. But the way they're working towards it, I think, is something that we ought to look at.
That's also repeated in the CSP now, that they have physio assistants.
Correct.
They come from soft tissue, they might come from sports therapy, they might come from sports rehab, but they're working in the NHS as exercise prescribers or, physio assistants, essentially.
And this is why I do think that having all this one to look after all might not be the best option. The other thing that often they say, I see, we don't get recognized, we don't have recognition as healthcare professionals. There are other, again, I say the industry has changed. we need to push for different, to look at a different model of we're talking about register, not even regulation, because I think we're talking about regulation without really understanding the impact that regulation can have on a profession like ours. Can you
remember during COVID, there was uproar from the physios because they weren't even included in the descriptors for who could and couldn't work. You know, we were lumped in initially with
the
parlours, and then because of some of the good work from the people involved in some of the associations, and I'm not going to name them, but they did some really good work with the EIS to get sports massage, sports and remedial massage, as its own category. So, you know, the industry has got sway, but whilst there are, you know, people involved who are not willing to talk, we haven't got a joint, you know, a big voice. We're speaking independently. And if you look at the whole regulatory route, one of the stakeholders that we've mentioned tonight is a supporter of the accredited register route, because I've just read from their website. Now, if you look, the person who founded that body also runs a training provider which runs an advanced diploma in sports therapy. It's not likely for commercial reasons that they're going to support statutory regulation, because that would then mean that all of their training is unsellable.
Mm-hmm.
So I think sometimes, well, I think all of the time, if a professional association is linked with a training provider, there's a conflict of interest.
Unless it's mitigated, unless the conflict of interest is mitigated by external audit.
Yeah, there's got to be external validation to it. But if a person in significant control of one of these stakeholders runs a training provider, I think it's a direct conflict of interest. We are writing CPD policies for our members. We are designing codes of conduct, codes of ethics, and then we're selling courses to them. That's definitely a conflict of interests.
It's very true. Right, listen, people, we're going to have to start wrapping stuff up. I just want to, I think we've covered a whole load of information in this, and in an hour, that's incredible. There were some points which I'm pretty sure we've covered from people who kindly left comments on our posts in the lead up to this. I just want to, I'm sure we've covered them, but Stuart Sahan, I hope that's the pronunciation, sports and exercise therapist and owner at Sports Therapy 1, raised the point. I mean, they left a comment actually on the SST's LinkedIn page in response to their important update on statutory regulation, where they just mentioned that the money, they mentioned that, to my knowledge, a physio registered as a chartered member of the CSP has an annual fee of £442.20. Mandatory registration with HCPC is around £232.72 biennially, along with relevant insurance costs. So Stuart was kind of pointing out this is something we need to consider before we start, thinking about where we should guide the future of our profession. So we talked about that. The cost is a huge thing that maybe some people aren't taking into account. We also had Patrick Chris, who's covered the points. Patrick Chris in the sports massage therapist community said, you run the risk of over-regulation, which turns into a money-making scheme. There is this problem, isn't there, of money-making and money. Yes, as the song says, it's just a real problem sometimes. That's something which, as you say, Gary, needs to be kept separate. You know, if we're looking after therapists and looking after the public, we can't expect it to be a profitable, lucrative kind of thing. And so that's something which else. Bernard Fong of the Vernard Clinic, said in his comments that statutory regulation is the internal carrot that gets dangled, and says that when it comes to CPD, it has to be kept up to date. You can get randomly selected for audit when it comes to renewal time. It'll be 2 people auditing, one from your profession, one from a different HCPC profession. There has to be indication of progress as well. You can't just be doing courses or skills you already have to tick one box. If you don't meet the criteria in the audit, there's a chance you can lose your registration. It happens. I've seen this happen. And that's something I've seen in the MSK Hub, with sponsored by Physio Matters and Joe Turner. It's very stressful with Mihab Koga. It's a very stressful time. And if you're there around audit time, you can see exactly how physios respond. Good, working, hard professionals who really care for their patients. It's as Bernard points out, it can be a horrible time for them, and even cause some people just leave the profession. John Richardson, go on.
Sorry, Matt, for full clarity, Bernard comes from a previously regulated industry. He chose to leave. And we've got a number of members who chose to leave their regulated profession.
They are out there, it's true. Yeah, it's true. What was Vinay before then? What do you not want to say?
It was something to do with eyes. I can't pronounce it, so
Okay.
I'm not even going to try.
Yeah. John Richardson. Hey, hi, John. Thanks for leaving the comment of JR Sports Massage and also Barefoot Physio. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. It's training to be a physio, actually.
Oh, fantastic. He said, I think the argument needs to move away from the perks of the professionals, recognition, comparison to other modalities and professions, towards what value, consistency and trust it could bring to the public. The political back and forth at professional government level seems to stall any progression. If statutory regulation set a pathway for more insurance or funded coverage for those who can't afford private treatment, would that not be a plus for the public? We didn't kind of mention that tonight, but
it goes back to the same thing, Matt. For being able to be provided by through the NHS, there is you don't necessarily need. You can bring forward a kind of a lobby to actually be. Look at what Basrat did. What Basrat did. So statutory regulation does not necessarily mean that you can get work from the NHS if you won't work from the NHS, because you realize that it's not necessarily everything that it seems to be. But this is not the only way to do it. And I personally, like with Gary, not because I do not think it will ever happen. I don't want my public money that work really hard, the money I spend for my taxi, that they are spent to regulating a profession that does not need to regulate it. I would prefer it for the money to be invested in healthcare and in other options, but not into regulating. Do we need to have a centralized system that we are accountable to, that is fit for purpose for our industry? I think that would be very beneficial. That sets the minimum standards. And I would say that should be a training cross-pollination between all the professions. So chiros, osteopaths, sports therapists, anybody that works with people with pain and injury, there should be a training cross-parliamentary, cross-professional, that we put down the basic the basic care that everybody has to follow in order to be able to work with people in pain.
I think there's too much elitism, for that to happen. With doctors of chiropractic and people in our industry create. I know it's changing, but it's changing very, very, very slowly.
I think
Anna Maria, we can't even sort out our own sector.
Oh yes, okay.
Before we start, doing cross-sector stuff. But when you wrap up, Matt, I just want to finish with a quote that I've got from HCPC. So have you got anything to add before I do that?
No, I just wanted to kind of conclude that it seems to me from what I've heard tonight, and like I say, we do want to do a follow-up, which I'll mention at the end. We need to have a conversation about maybe how to achieve and promote standardization of education and training. That should be the bigger topic, because that would be something that will still have its barriers and still going to have lots of conversations, but it's something we should be moving towards, because it sounds like, thanks to you guys kind of showing your experience, that would satisfy a lot of the criteria which people are after, which they think the only way of getting that is through statutory regulation, and it would avoid a lot of the problems like financial considerations that come with statutory regulation and wouldn't necessarily come with just simply standardization of education and training. So is that a fair summary? Is that what the next debate needs to be? How can we move forwards and do that? It's probably got as many challenges as ever, but it's something we need to talk about, and then maybe that could be the topic. Well, like I say, no, you go first, Gary. I'm going to finish up with, again, my call out to people to do a follow up to this. What were you going to say, Gary? What's the quote?
Well, I think for that to happen, Matt, I'm going to be absolutely honest here. Those initial conversations can't happen in the public domain on a podcast. Those need to happen, behind closed doors, so that we can have an agenda for forward movement. I think that there's, I'm called a charlatan by members of this industry. I've been told that people have been told to avoid the STA standard at Therapy Expert because I'm a charlatan. I may not be a doctor or professor, but what I am is an honest individual who commits to my members that I will support them come what may. I will tell them the truth about the industry. And for that, I'm shot down because I'm ruining the commercialism of other business models. But the final point I want to read out, Matt, and I email HCPC and PSA, Professional Standards Authority, every year. The last response I got was just before COVID, and that's on my website at the bottom on the PDF links. But when I email HCPC, I always get a link to this minute of this meeting. This meeting took place on the 10th of February 2011, and minute 8.2, the review of regulation of public health professionals had recommended the regulation of public health professionals by the HCP, and a subsequent press release issued after a white paper stated that the government would only ever consider statutory regulation for further professions as a last resort.
But was that the Conservatives? Is it significant there's been a government change now, or do you think it would be the same response?
Well, no. If you look at the Chancellor's statement yesterday, they've got a £22 billion black hole, and that's multiple departments across government, multiple quangos. The HCPC is not going to get any extra funding to sort this problem out. We've got bigger fish to fry. We're still paying for COVID. We're still paying for the HS2. We're still paying for lots of things. Lots of services have been cut. This is not a priority for government.
Right. Okay. Theory into practice. I think we may have given people more questions than answers, which wasn't necessarily our intention, but that is the reality at the moment. Sometimes in life you look for quick answers, but there's not. It is a confused area, and that's why the original question, statutory regulation for sports therapists, is not a simple answer. If you're saying yes, definitely, or you're saying no, there's a middle ground of confusion where most people should really lie when they've got all the information at hand. So, but to try and put some theory into practice, imagine that our listeners have listened to this. And they've taken on board what you've said. What could therapists themselves, sports therapists themselves, be doing to help our industry with regards to standardization, with regards to sorting out this conflict of interests and stuff?
If we go back to that post, Matt, that came out on social media, we shouldn't be sending draft emails to our MP. What we should be doing is making our professional associations accountable for what they're telling us. And anybody and if I ever tell anybody that they must be a member of the STA, going forward, if regulation was happening, please shoot me. You have my full permission in public to shoot me, because it's not right. You have no obligation to be a member of an association. Speak to them all, find out how they're going to represent you, find out how they're going to support you, find out how much they're going to charge you. Is it value for money? Have you done your due diligence about the company that you're paying, the people that you're paying? And if you have, make an informed choice. That's all I ask. Make an informed choice, but do the due diligence.
Great stuff. And Anna, theory into practice?
I add to that literally what Gary said, but what I add, and we might want to put those links here. Go and read what statutory regulation is. Go and look at do it like a little review, a pro and the cons of it. And that's you make an informed choice. If you think that the way our profession, the broader, is actually would be best suited to statutory regulation. So, because often I hear this idea of statutory regulation, but actually there is not, it might not actually be what people think it is. But standardizations, yes, push, make your professional association accountable.
So putting theory into practice is have a conversation with your professional association and maybe send them links to this podcast, see what they think about it. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of that going on. And also
ask them why you're not collaborating with others. Instead of putting something like that on the social media like it's been put, would it not been better to contact all the other sports therapy association and say, we might have the option, the government has changed. What do we think? Do we have a common ground here? And then if there was no common ground, they could have taken the things, they can take the things by themselves. But to put it up there, not contacting the industry, those are people that we rely on.
Mm-hmm.
And if at the first one not wanting to collaborate, what chance have we got?
Excellent. Yeah, and just to add, if you have listened to this and it's been some of the things we've talked about have been a bit of a shock, you may have felt that we are insulting somebody who you have a high kind of respect for, then we understand your first reaction is probably going to be anger. It's going to be push it away. These people don't know what they're talking about. That's normal, totally human. I would have the same thing if somebody started slagging somebody I respected off. But once you get through that, then maybe just check things out, talk, communicate with your professional association, tell them a nice, calm way. Well, I heard this was mentioned the other day, and they might come back with a suitable answer. If it's just, oh, those guys are charlatans, then that's not really a very sensible, productive kind of debate. But if it's explained in another different way, cohesive way, then fine, that's marvelous. And we'd love to have you along on the show commenting on that. But just communicate. If you are paying money to be part of a professional association, and I'm sure the idea of professional association is we're supporting you, we're answering your questions. It's the same as a therapist and a client or patient. We're here to facilitate. We're not making you, not guiding you to do this or to buy this, or whatever. We're here to listen to you, the same as we listen to a patient, and help support you for whatever queries you have. So do that. That would be my theory into practice. Communicate and make sure that you are in a position where you are being supported and looked after. And yeah, have that conversation. And if you have been affected by it, then do feel free to email us as well. We're not saying, oh, just turn around and join us. That's not our goal at all. Believe us, not at all. Is it, Gary? We don't expect everyone to turn around and join our association. We might not be the best association for you.
Not at all, no. Yeah. But I'm more than willing to have a chat with anybody who would like to join and see how I can support their journey and the team can support their journey. And we've got lots of things planned, and we've got lots of information that we would have liked to have got out today that we haven't. But what I would say is that I will never disrespect anybody who has spent and dedicated their life to supporting an industry. You know, I will never disrespect anybody at the CNHC, the GCNT, the SST, the STO, because we may have differences of opinion, but there should always be professional respect. Mm-hmm. And it's the differences of opinion that we discuss around that table. So I haven't meant to offend anybody today, but, you know, being offended is a choice. You know, I've just put publicly available information out into the public domain again, where it already is. You know, don't shoot me for that.
Great points.
And I've just realised my phone might be out of action for the next 2 weeks.
I know, but that's great. Hey, we're talking. We always talk about communication. That's all we're doing here. We're opening up debate, and hopefully there will be some useful criticism, because none of us are claiming to be perfect, and some of the information we put out there might not be as factual as we believe it is. So we hope this starts a debate. And like we say, if we can have a follow-up or a second episode where people can come along and write things in the comments, that's always an option. We'd love to do that. If you do have any feedback in particular to save Gary's phone, because he's got a lot of members to look after and help them, then let me be the conduit for your feedback and anger. I've got broad shoulders, not as big as our Gary here, but email me, matt@TheSTA.co.uk. Any concerns you've got, I'll accept shouty emails. Don't worry, I'm too old and wise now to get offended by anything you say. You can talk about us personally, it's fine. I would prefer you to do that and just not talk to us at all, because that doesn't help at all. So matt@TheSTA.co.uk, and I will engage and reply. That said and done, we've got 2 weeks off now. For you, hopefully, to relax. I'm sure a lot of you are still working. Not everyone naturally can go on summer holidays, but hopefully with the better weather, if it stays where you are, that you get a chance to smell the roses and look after yourself. With that in mind, I would, again, just stress you check out �MEHAB𝐽, �MEHAB.co.uk. It's one of the things that's resonating in our mind. We're in an industry where we're doing this to look after others. And in that, by definition, it means often we don't look after ourselves. Our goal is to look after as many people as possible, and it's so easy for you not to look after yourselves. So check out �MEHAB.co.uk. Even join the �MEHAB.co.uk Facebook group, because Jo does some lovely videos where it's just, I mean, she's so amazing to listen to, but just some things to reflect and pause, like 6 or 7 minutes, and it's enough to make you go, oh, you know what? That's something I should be thinking about. And literally, I listened to one today, and it just listened to it while I was just relaxing, and it was just so valuable. So do that. There's my theory into practice. Check out �MEHAB.co.uk just to chill yourselves out, especially after today's heated discussion. That's it. Thanks, Gary Benson, founder of the STA. Thank you, Anna Maria, director of the ST School. Really appreciate your time. Guys, if you listen to the podcast and you've enjoyed it, Actually, if this episode, no one leave any ratings or reviews, please. Let's just forget about that for this episode. Don't need to. Forget it. Don't touch the button. But we would like to, however angry or happy you are, would like you to follow us on social media and have your voice in 3 weeks' time when we do the next SDA podcast, so we can talk. That's it. Bye, people. Enjoy life, and hopefully we'll speak to you soon. Take care.